Okay, today's lesson is quite a lengthy lesson, so I needed to chop it in half. So I stopped at sexual reproduction. There's two types of reproduction. One is sexual, one is asexual. I'll get to them in a bit. But first I need to speak about biosecurity and reproduction and survival in general. So biosecurity, you find this at the airport. When you're trying to come back from overseas into Australia, you'll notice that they're very stringent. They're very tedious when it comes to things like, do you have mud underneath your shoes? Are you bringing back any soil, any plants, any living organism, or even a dead one for that matter? Are you bringing like the skin of an animal? All these questions you get asked because if something very small enters Australia, it's going to destroy a lot of things. So it's either going to destroy farms or it's going to destroy your outdoor life cycle. For example, if the red fire ant comes to Australia, you can't live outdoors because every time you go out, you might get bitten, and the fire ant has a stinging bite which can kill a human. So you're going to not want to go outside. And the good thing about Australia is it's an island. So it's covered with water. It's got oceans and seas around it. So it's very well protected to begin with. So all that customs have to do is to maintain this protection. So they're very tedious at the airport. And they look in your luggage, they look under your shoe, whatever, and they get a dog to smell, which is much more sensitive than our smell. Reproduction and survival is the only topic. The reason why we reproduce is so our species as a human can survive. So we're going to die as individuals, but maybe our children will continue our genes and humanity can possibly survive. So I want to then talk to you about the two types of reproduction. The first one is sexual reproduction, where you need a mother and a father, basically. You need two parents. And the second type is asexual reproduction, which we're not going to talk about today. Asexual reproduction is simply, you don't need two parents, one is sufficient. So we're not going to talk about that today. Sexual reproduction in plants, you have a diagram on page 141 in your science student textbook, Pearson Science Student Textbook, 141, you have this amazing diagram where it shows you the structure of a plant, the structure of the male and female components of a plant. So you have the male component of a plant is basically the anther. And what this does is, it's a bit too small. The pollen, which is basically the sperm of a plant, comes off the anther. It gives you the pollen. This pollen then has to travel to the stigma, which is the female part of a plant, for fertilization to occur. Fertilization just means fertilization. It just means when the sperm and the egg combine. That's all it means. That's what fertilization means. So the pollen from the anther, it needs to travel to the stigma to have the egg, to allow the egg to be fertilized. So this is the male component here, and this is the female component. And inside your stigma you have the ovaries, and when the pollen enters the stigma, the ovaries, the egg in the ovaries becomes a fruit, and that fruit then contains a lot of seeds. So the next time you eat an apple or a mango, think about the fact that you're actually eating a part of a plant. You're eating the ovaries, basically. You're eating the child of the plant, basically. And that seed, if you plant it, it'll give you a new plant, hopefully. Moving along, I need you to memorize all the parts of the plants on page 141. And I want to talk to you about the seed. The seed in a plant contains a little embryo. That embryo is basically a very, very underdeveloped tree, and it's dried out. So the seed is basically like a tiny little baby plant but it's very dry. And in order for that to grow, it needs to be nourished with water. And later on, it starts to sprout. So you have the root coming out of the seed downwards, and you have the leaf searching its way up, and then you start to get its first sunshine. This is called germination. Germination. So the act of the seed becoming sprouting is called germination. Moving along to sexual reproduction in animals, there are differences between the way animals reproduce or copulate. Copulation is the act of a male and a female having intercourse. This word is called copulation. So then you have to think, okay, some animals do things differently. The site of fertilization is very different. So frogs and some fish, a lot of fish actually, what they do is they lay their egg in the water. So the female lays its eggs in the water, and the male rocks up after the female's long gone, because it's, think about the ocean, okay? It's a huge place. I mean, it's so much more than the land that we have on Earth. And imagine you're a fish and you're trying to find another fish. It's very, very difficult. You have, 70-something% of the Earth is water, and only 20-something% is land. So it's so much harder to find each other. So if you're a female and you're an adult female and you want to reproduce, it's instead of trying to find Mr. Right or whatever, instead of waiting around, you just lay your egg and hope that one day that will hatch, that will be fertilized by a male fish or a male frog. So this is what happens. There's external fertilization, which is what I've just described, where the female lays its egg and then, swims away. And there's internal fertilization, where the baby grows inside the animal. And humans do this. Actually, every single land animal undergoes internal fertilization. Every single land animal. And the way internal fertilization happens is the sperm is injected into the female body. Exactly like a syringe, actually. So the site of fertilization differentiates a lot of animals. Then you have the development of a baby. The development could happen outside, could happen inside, or could happen both. I mean, you could start off growing in your mother's womb, and later on you could continue growing outside. So think about a marsupial like a kangaroo. We call this partial development, where the baby grows a little bit inside the womb, and then it comes out, and then it starts growing inside the pouch. So same as humans. But then you have animals that are just born and they already know how to walk, or they already know how to swim. Like sharks, they say, are born swimming. So this brings me to my next point, paternal care. So humans, because we're not fully developed in our mother's womb, we cannot just, we're not just born and then we start walking, talking, singing, whatever. We can't just eat for ourselves. We can't look after ourselves. We are taken care of entirely by our mothers, mainly our mothers. And we have a lot of paternal care. Our parents, paternal means basically parents, our parents look after us because we're so vulnerable, we are so weak when we're born. But when you look at another animal, like a giraffe, it's born and it starts to walk within, 2 or 3 minutes. It gets up, it shakes itself off, and it starts to walk. It stumbles at first, but guess what? 2-3 minutes, it's walking. Humans, 2-3 years maybe, But the reason for that is because it takes so long for our brain to develop that our body is still underdeveloped when we're born. So when you look at a baby when they're young, what does it look like? When they cry, and then they look at you. So they know what's going. A baby knows what's happening, but it can't speak, it can't walk, talk, it can't do all these things yet. So we still need a lot of paternal care. So this sums up sexual reproduction in plants and animals. And I repeat, you need to go to page 141 to memorize the diagram of the plant. Hopefully this will be in your exam. Hint, hint. My next lesson will be on asexual reproduction.